This season of the Creative Piano Teaching Podcast is proudly supported by My Music staff.
I spent a lot of time just asking questions about because he put this braille music on the stand and I went, what is that?
As we all did.
Welcome to the Creative Piano Teaching Podcast, the place where teachers from around the world meet to share innovative ideas about music education. Listen and learn as we help you motivate your students, grow your income, expand your studio, and become a more creative piano teacher.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Season 4, 2018 of the Creative Piano Teaching Podcast. My name is Tim Topham, your host for the show, and if this is your first time here, thank you so much for tuning in. You're listening to episode number 142, and a very special welcome to my Inner Circle piano teaching community members. The Creative Piano Teaching Podcast is your home for inspiration, ideas, business, and teaching strategies to help support your teaching and grow your studio. In today's episode, we've got a wonderful and touching story about one teacher's experience working with a blind student with absolutely zero prior experience. We'll talk about how she helped him read braille music without knowing how that even worked or that it existed, how he managed to play it with physical limitations in his hands, and where she found support and resources to develop her own teaching to support this student. Today's show notes and a full transcript are now available at timtopham.com/episode 142. My guest today you'll know from the last season of the podcast. She's a UWA piano performance graduate, that's the University of Western Australia, who has played an active role as a passionate performer, presenter, collaborative pianist, and an experienced teacher in both the West Australian community and abroad. She is currently on the West Australian Music Teachers Association Council, serving as Vice President, and was drawn to the Council in order to assist improving the standard and quality of private music studio teaching in the state. She has strong experience in many forms of movement studies, including dance, yoga, Pilates, Alexander technique, as well as experience in the Taubman approach. In her spare time, she loves to explore new technology and apps to improve her teaching, learning new repertoire, playing chamber music, cooking up a storm, traveling, and tending to her gardens and, yes, chickens. Annie, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me back. I love it.
Oh, look, this is actually, I've just realized this is your third podcast because you were actually on one of my very first episodes when we did a section on technique and we were talking about the Taubman technique. Do you remember that?
I do indeed.
Way back, and I remember distinctly it was like 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. for you, and the birds were squawking in the background. It was hysterical.
I was on this national music camp, and it was a chamber music festival in Sydney of all things, and I had to I think I had to sneak out of the dorms to not wake everyone up to make the podcast happen. So hence the birds. Sorry.
And it was so loud. It was very fun. It was so Australian too, the sound of those birds. Anyway, so look, welcome back, as I say, to the podcast. Today we're talking about teaching a special needs student that you've been working with for some time now who's blind, and we'll get into the details of all of that. But just before that, can you give people a quick update if they didn't catch your last interview? Where are you based? What kind of teaching and performing do you do?
Sure. So I'm based in Perth in Western Australia, and I teach a few sort of specialist niche sort of areas. So the Taubman approach is one of my big ones. I'm teaching a lot of that, and I work with students, as we're about to talk about my blind student coming up, and I teach a lot of generic and adult beginners, as well as another one of my main sort of fields, and I perform in a piano trio as well as a couple of piano duos, and I play for a lot of AMEB and university recitals and exams.
Right. And if you didn't catch Annie's last interview, it was in season 3, and it was all about how she hired her first teacher to help her grow her studio. So it was a great interview. Make sure you check that out if that's a stage where you're up to. But today, as we said, all about teaching a blind student. And as I mentioned in last season, I was over at the West Australian Piano Pedagogy Conference, and you were kind enough to pick me up from the airport, and were just kind of off the cuff. You just told me, oh, yes, you're teaching a blind student, and oh, yes, and he's reading braille music. And I just went, what? Hang on. This is I've never. I didn't even know there was a Braille music, and I've never experienced teaching a blind student or really talked to anyone about it. So that's why I said we have to get you on the podcast, because I know other teachers will come up with some of these same challenges. So what was it like when you first, I assume you got a call from a parent? Were you like jumping at it with excitement, or were you a bit terrified as well?
Oh, well, it wasn't actually a call from a parent. It was an email circulating around asking if anyone was up to teaching this blind student, and at one of the schools I was teaching at, and I kind of put my hand up. I don't really know why, but
because you're that kind of a person. That's why
I know.
You're amazing.
I'm like, oh, I haven't done that before.
Yeah,
Let's give that a
right.
go. I'm a little bit too curious for my own good sometimes, but no. So I thought, all right, I'll give it a trial. I contacted the parents and I said, let's give it a couple of weeks to a month and see how we go, because I've got no experience in this, but I have a lot of movement-based approaches in my other parts of my teaching, so I'm happy to give it a go and just see how we go.
You're just amazing, because I personally would be really cautious about saying yes to something like that. So you're amazing. So what happened next? Oh, tell us about your student first. Boy, girl, age?
Yeah, so he's 16 or 17 now, I think. He's a boy.
Yep.
And he's currently doing his Year 12 WACE, the WA certificate, the final music exams
so
as well.
Final year of high school.
Yep, and he wants to get into UWA, our local university, into the conservatorium. He's really dead set on doing music. So, yep, we're
good
working
on
hard
him.
on that.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And how old was he when you started teaching him?
Oh, I've probably had him for maybe a couple of years. So, yeah, around that 15 sort of mark.
So the whole 4-week trial thing ended up being a 2-year experience, and is still continuing to this day.
Absolutely, yeah, very keen.
And so how can he see it all, or is he completely not sighted?
He has one eye that he can see, perhaps his mobile phone if it's held to his, like right up to his face, and that's about it.
Right. Okay. So from the distance to a piano music stand, or even down to the keys.
No, can't say that.
Is it black, or is it just kind of out of focus? Do you know?
I'm not 100% sure on that regard, but
right. Okay.
Yeah.
So you've said yes in the email. You've spoken to the parents. He's arrived for his first lesson. What did you do? What happened?
I'm trying to think back now. What did happen? I think he brought in some of the pieces that he'd been working on, and I spent a lot of time just asking questions about like because he put this Braille music on the stand, and I went, "What is that?"
As we all would. So, what does it look like?
It's a lot bigger, so it's not quite A3, but wouldn't be far off.
Okay. It's like double the size almost of a normal book. Yeah.
Yeah, it's huge. And from what I have gathered from asking him over the last couple of years is, he might have maybe only like a quarter of a page of what we might have on our regular music on his page. And the tricky thing is there's no way to be able to conceptualize both parts simultaneously. So he has to feel the right-hand part and he has to feel the left-hand part, but that has to be obviously at separate moments. And you can't feel them simultaneously, not like we would read two lines simultaneously.
Right.
Or be able to bounce between the two. So, and there's all sorts of different symbols and things. And it's interesting when I ask, well, how's that notated in your music? And he's like, well, it's kind of hard to explain, but it's not very logical with this. And and especially when it comes to things like, hand redistributions or, he doesn't have things like fingering and stuff. So he doesn't quite get the full picture in that regard, but, it has enough detail in it.
Right.
Apparently.
Wow. And so for you to look at it, it's just a blank page with lots of bumps, raised bits on it, right? And so let's say he's learning the right hand, he'll use his left hand, I assume, to move over the braille while he reads the notes and plays with the right hand?
Correct. Yep.
Right. And so how many years had he learnt before you took him on?
I think he started quite young. So I think he started around the six mark.
And do you know if he could see when he started?
I'm pretty sure he couldn't. No.
Right.
no. But I think when he originally started, and from what I've heard with a lot of people with this, is that they learn primarily through Suzuki and orally.
Mm-hmm.
And there's communities like quite a big blind community, I think, where they hold camps and things and have specialists that teach the notation as well.
I was going to say, yeah, where on earth did he learn to read Braille music?
Yeah, on these camps that they hold, I think once or twice a year. I think he might even still be on it I think it's over in Sydney. I'd have to find that out.
Okay. So in all of our local areas, there would be a way for students to learn how to read music by Braille. I assume it's probably a camp where they learn Braille everything or other things as well, perhaps, or is it music specific?
No, it's music specific.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's just fascinating. Yeah. It's just another. I just didn't even know any of this existed. That's amazing.
Neither did I.
Yeah. So he's come into his first lesson. You're asking lots of questions. You've seen the Braille music. He's obviously played some things for you. What was his level like?
He's probably, I think when he started, he was maybe about the 6th or 7th grade AMEB.
Okay, so that's late intermediate. Like that's pretty good playing.
Yeah.
And did he ask to learn particular music with you? What was your approach for the first few weeks?
I suppose it was more of a technical thing because something else that's a little bit special about my student is he was born with like webbed fingers. So he has the I think it's still even to this day a couple of times a year he has to have surgery to like basically turn them into individual fingers again.
Wow.
And so his hands aren't quite regular like his left hand is, but his right hand's got like the odd finger sticking in a different direction. And so I suppose I was more watching his hands and just seeing how he I take this approach with all of my students regardless of whether they're blind or not, but they bring what they need to me and I'll help them get around the technique of it because they obviously know what they're trying to achieve and I just help them do that. So he's like, oh, I can't quite make these leaps here, or I can't do this. And so there was lots of just kind of understanding not only how he processes all of this stuff, but how he's moving and how we could get around, his limitations in his hands.
As you say, a great approach for any student to meet them where they're at and take them where they want to go.
Exactly.
Did you help him then achieve the next level of exams or something?
Yeah, well, we've only been doing the school exams, but yeah, so I've helped him in his repertoire selection a lot. Just making sure that it's up to standard because he does most of the learning himself in terms of like he uses a lot of recordings and but when it comes to things like fingerings and that I'm helping him out in that regard and the musicianship as well and just general technique. So I don't really do a great deal with the notation side of it and getting it into the hands, but he's an avid listener and I just help him what he needs at any given time.
Now, a quick word from our sponsor, My Music Staff. Most of you have already heard about My Music Staff and how their software helps thousands of music teachers manage their businesses more efficiently. They handle all of your student management issues, scheduling, billing, and so much more. It's what I personally use in my own studio, and it's no surprise why it's the leading studio management software. What I think really makes My Music Staff stand out is its community-driven development and personal approach to customer support. It was such a pleasant surprise jumping into My Music Staff for the first time and realising how in tune it was with my business and the ins and outs of a music studio. Since they partner with the music community to develop their software, they've been able to anticipate what teachers need and are constantly improving their software to exceed expectations. My Music Staff is super easy to get up and running. The transition away from paper and spreadsheets is painless. If you do need help, the quality of support is second to none and you'll always get a fully personalised response. I have yet to see the level of attention and care I receive from My Music Staff provided by any other software platforms I use, and I use a lot of software in my business. So what have you got to lose? Just go to mymusicstaff.com and sign up for their free 30-day trial today. I imagine he plays by ear a fair bit. He'll listen a lot and play what he hears.
Yes.
Yeah. And so he'll combine that with the notation with your help to create the outcome.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you're teaching a piece of music and he's got his braille score there, do you have your printed notation to follow along with?
Always. Yeah, because that's something to you have to be quite organized in the way that you teach new passage work as well.
Mm-hmm.
Just from a standpoint of, obviously I can't point on his music where to go from.
Of course. See, simple thing I wouldn't have even thought of. Of course you can't.
Yeah, so I have to break it into. I have to be very clear in my mind about which section we're approaching and go, this is your little memory goalpost. We're going from this bar here, and he has to kind of get the bar numbers happening, and know where the sections are.
Right.
Or I have to be able to just kind of jump in and play from wherever. So, and considering he's playing this higher end repertoire, it's definitely kept my skills sharp, because you can't fudge anything or just point if you haven't touched a piece before. So you have to be a little more prepared, I find.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other challenge is that you can't mark his music. So how does that work?
Okay, so that was something that took me a few weeks to get my head around. Be like, okay, well, you need to refinger this entire passage. So what we do in those cases is I have to play it through very slowly and say the finger numbers of everything that I'm playing, so he can record it and listen back to it.
Oh wow! Okay,
yeah.
So just for absolute simplicity, if you were playing the first 5 notes of a C major scale, you'd play C. You'd say 1, 2, 3. 4, 5 as you're playing the notes, and he's recording this on his phone or something.
Yep. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Sorry. If you're going up the full octave, yes. Correct. Correction accepted. And so again, it's not just listening to the music being played and absorbing that. It's listening to the music being played. It's reading the braille. It's listening to your recordings of how to do things as well.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
What? It is amazing, because it just makes me realize just how easy we have it by being able to read the music.
Oh, absolutely. And he does say that often to me. He's just like, he gets so envious that we can all just sight read something, and bless him. But it is much slower. That's something I have noticed in terms of learning this music. But he's getting strategies to learn things quicker. But I think just the fact that you can't conceptualize both lines simultaneously makes it a bit difficult in that regard. But he's getting very strong harmony skills. So I do a fair bit of theory and harmony stuff with him too. So he's got a better framework for his memory as well, and it can become a bit more predictable.
The other thing we haven't talked about is obviously the keyboard and knowing where he is. Now, most of us as teachers, we could shut our eyes and still play things. Is that the same? Kind of the same approach? I guess leaps become difficult, but otherwise that's not the hardest part of it. It's really transcribing, getting the music into his fingers.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right in that regard. Because he's obviously got a highly developed tactile memory, or tactile sense, I should say. And, I've found even in my own playing, it's been really interesting when I have to explain to him, when you do things like leaps, how you're going to get there, how you're going to land, how you're going to feel that. And I'm often doing things, I'm looking at the ceiling while I'm going, all right, you need to feel that group of 3 and turn. Like I have to.
It's hard, and you've really got to judge it. My teacher used to always discuss leaps as coming from the elbow, a movement of the elbow, like judging how far you're moving outwards on the keyboard by where your elbow's moving. And I imagine those kinds of things would be even more important for someone who literally cannot look down.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, and that's where my Taubman side comes into it. And I find that has been incredibly helpful in gauging things like that, because, I'm very switched on about the mechanics of how to move the body.
Yeah.
In this regard. So I think that's partially where my confidence came from when I agreed to take him on, because I went, okay, well, this is going to be very movement based. I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah. And for those of you, those listeners who don't know what Taubman is, you've mentioned that a couple of times. Just a quick overview of that.
So the Taubman approach is basically it's an approach to piano playing. It's not a method, whereby it allows pianists to move in the most efficient ways, so they can basically achieve more virtuosity with more ease. And it's very popular in terms of retraining injured musicians. So That's something else I do a lot.
Yeah. And you've been trained in this approach, haven't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
I've spent a lot of time in the States in the last few years devoting my time to that. Yeah.
Very passionate about it. We've also talked a fair bit about the Taubman technique. I've had success with my own playing and some pain mitigation strategies from one of the other teachers here in Australia. So highly recommended it if people are interested in that approach to it's really about the movement of the body and making sure everything's flowing and used effectively to avoid any kind of tension or strain. Definitely check it out. And we've done a number of podcasts and blog articles about it too, which we'll link to in the show notes for today. So let's I'm just so in awe of your teaching and the things that you've put your hand up to do. I think it's just amazing. So what are some of your other tips, I guess, for teachers who would be in two situations? One, have had inquiries from a teacher from a student with limited vision, or they're already teaching someone or about to start teaching someone with limited vision.
Okay. So I would say if you're not sure, just give it a go, just specify, be very honest with the parents and say, oh, look, let's give it a trial. That's exactly how I went about it. Because if it doesn't work out and you don't feel comfortable with it, that's totally fine, but at least you're giving it a go. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? You might have a couple of lessons and then they don't come back.
Right.
Yeah. And also something else I should mention too is when I did agree to take this on, I reached out a little bit and I put on one of our, I think it was the Australasian Piano Teachers Facebook page or something. I was like, does anyone have any experience with this? And I actually came across a blind piano teacher in Melbourne.
Oh, really?
Who was, happy to share her experience. And, I gave her a call for about an hour and just kind of picked her brain a little bit. And she said, just happy to help with anything you need along the way.
Wow.
But yeah, I haven't really needed to badger her too much, but from time to time. Just don't be afraid to reach out because you never know who knows. And most people are happy to share their experience.
Right. Yeah. Well, you're an absolute superstar. Thank you so much for sharing this little story today. I know it's going to be helpful for teachers out there who are listening. So where can people go to find out more about you and all the amazing things that you're up to?
Sure. So they can visit my website, which is www.playwellperth.com.au.
Brilliant. And as I mentioned in the introduction to Annie's one of our Inner Circle community members. So if you are interested in connecting with her more personally, you can find her in our community forums and ask her any questions. I'm sure she'll be only too happy to help out. So Annie, I'll let you get back on with your very busy day. Thank you again for being on the show.
Oh, thanks so much, Tim.
Wasn't that just an amazing story? I give so much credit to teachers who are willing to take that leap into the complete unknown right outside of the comfort zone and just say, you know what, I'm going to give this a shot. And you can hear how much growth Annie herself has experienced from teaching this student and exploring outside her comfort zone. She's an amazing teacher, and I do value her coming on the show and exploring that topic with us today. I hope you enjoyed it. Okay, now great news. My Facebook ads webinar is now live and ready for signups. If you haven't already done so, make sure you head to timtopham.com/webinar to sign up for it. It's on Saturday the 20th of October at 8 a.m. Melbourne time, which is Friday the 19th, 10 p.m. London, and about 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific on the Friday. So we're going to cover just about everything that you need to know about Facebook ads. And I've got a special guest on the show who's a world-leading expert on Facebook advertising. And she's been working with me on my Facebook ads for over a year now. And she knows really well exactly what music teachers need. So this isn't just a general or generic sort of look at Facebook ads. This is really specific to piano teachers. So we're going to talk about goals and the components of an ad, calculating how much you should be spending, setting up your targeting, using the interface, what an ad set is and how to use them, and how to know if your ads are working. And we'll talk about images versus videos and all that kind of stuff. So make sure you sign up right now if you haven't already done so, timtopham.com/webinar. Next week on the podcast, I've invited a special guest to answer questions I get from teachers all the time who are playing in worship or church music settings regarding things about, questions about how to play in bands, how to manage the service leader's expectations, how to rearrange music often on the fly, and importantly, how to improvise music on the spot. So for anyone who plays in a church or worship setting or would like to, or if you would like to help your students be able to have confidence in improvising on the spot and playing in a band, then this will be an episode for you. Can't wait to share it with you. I'm Tim Topham, and this is the Creative Piano Teaching Podcast. Thanks so much for listening.
Ladies and gentlemen, that will conclude this evening's entertainment.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Creative Piano Teaching Podcast. We'd love to help take your teaching to the next level as a member of our supportive community. Use the coupon Piano Podcast for $100 off an annual membership of Tim's Inner Circle today. To find out more, head to timtopham.com/community.